Hello, Blitz fans of all ages, it's me, PlumCastle, and in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Renault G1. Now, I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently because what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to go over the statistics, and then afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and play 2 live games to kind of show you how this thing plays. But of course, we have to start with the statistics. So if we come into the statistics here, we can see that this tank has 750 hit points, which all in all is pretty decent at tier 5. It's not the highest, but it's definitely not a low number. View range sitting at 233 meters. That's, in my mind, I want to say that's about average. It's not crazy because after all, this is a heavy tank. It's not really meant for spotting. Concealment at 27. While stationary, while moving, it's 21. And when firing, of course, it drops all the way down to 6 because once you fire, pretty much everyone can see you. Damage per minute is at 1,419, which is actually pretty decent, I would say. Reload time sitting at 7.19 seconds, which is also pretty decent, I would say. It's maybe not quite as fast as some of the other tier 5s, but it's definitely not bad. In terms of average penetration, we've got some, I would say, okay-ish numbers. The AP rounds are sitting at 128 millimeters. High explosive anti-tank, so heat rounds, which is something that's kind of rare to see in tier 5. That's sitting at about 152 millimeters of penetration, which is still not quite enough to penetrate, particularly some tier 6 heavy tanks. High explosive, of course, is not very high. It's sitting at about 38 millimeters of penetration, which is honestly not very much. In fact, you may not even really be able to reliably penetrate an AMX, the tier 5 AMX in this tier. So yeah, maybe not the greatest on high explosive. In terms of average damage though, for AP rounds we've got 170, which is, I believe, a little bit higher than the T1 heavies. High explosive anti-tank or the heat rounds, those are sitting at about 150. And of course, high explosive is sitting at 220. So in general, the high explosive on this tank is pretty weak, both in its penetration and honestly, when you compare an AP round of 170 damage, considering that you're only gaining, what is that, like 50 damage for the high explosive, is just not a lot. So in general, I would actually recommend just not shooting HE with this. Aim time 4.4 seconds, so it will take you a second to aim in. That's pretty typical with heavy tanks. Dispersion sitting at about 0.4, roughly 0.4. It's 0.395. So really, with that, I mean, that's okay, I guess. It's probably not going to be the best accuracy in the world. I wouldn't expect to cross-map with this thing, but hopefully with this being a heavy tank, being a little bit closer and in the action should be pretty good. Moving into something very interesting, though. So the gun turn limit, or basically its elevation and depression. So the elevation is 15. That's not the greatest, but what is very, very good is a gun depression of 10 degrees, which is actually extremely rare to see in especially a French tank like this. Generally speaking, French tanks don't have the best gun depression overall. Armor-wise, I'll show a bit on screen as long as I can actually find it. But basically, the armor on this tank is like, it's okay. It's not the greatest, but it's definitely going to get you some bounces from time to time. Forward speed on the tank is 37, reverse is 11. That's honestly a little bit slow. It could definitely be better. So it's not exactly a speedy tank, we'll just say that. Average speed overall is about 29, which is, again, kind of slow. And the rest of these, like weight, it's 38 tons. That's not a terribly heavy tank, if you ask me. Turning rate at 29.37 degrees a second, so it can turn around. Full turn rate, roughly 45 degrees a second. So at about 2 seconds, you'll turn to the right, which is a little bit slow, I guess. Terrain crossing capabilities, road 106, ground 81, and water 62. So definitely water is going to be slowing you down quite a bit when it comes to this tank. And the engine power sitting at about 570. Overall, there's nothing that really screams super good about this tank, but we are going to play some games and we're going to see how it all plays, because sometimes, stats, they say one thing, but it can feel totally different, and especially with that gun depression, I think we're going to be able to get some things done and hopefully our armor will work to our favor. Now, real quick to show you what I have, I don't have any equipment on this, so keep in mind if you're running equipment, you can actually get some slightly better statistics than what I mentioned. When it comes to provisions, basically I would always recommend going with something that increases your crew mastery, so that will have a slight effect on the stats that I just said. So if your stats don't quite line up with mine, it could be you aren't running the crew mastery provision here. It's at an extra 3%. It doesn't do much, but you can see all the things that it modifies over on the right. So things like view range, damage per minute, reload time, aiming time, etc., etc. And then the other thing that I typically run, actually, generally speaking, I would run standard fuel, but because it's tier 5 and I could get damaged in the side or something, I decided to go with protective kit. So basically this will just give you a little bit extra protection for your modules. But anyway, with all that said, aside from this being how I distribute my ammo, and honestly the high explosive could probably stand to be a little bit less, more like 8, maybe give a little bit more to my APCR. But with all that said, it's now time to play some live games and see what we can accomplish with this tank. Now, I've played this tank in, I want to say, a handful of battles. They've been fun modes. So I do have a little bit of an understanding now of how this tank is going to play. And hopefully we can get 2 games where we get about like 1,000 damage in them. It's tier 5, nothing too crazy. I'm not really expecting much more than that. Probably somewhere within the range of, I would say, 700 damage to like maybe 1,100 if I get lucky. Tier 5 is where I've played a lot of, and it's generally where I'm more comfortable, but I also don't really play this tank much at all. Now, we gotta wait till we land into a game, which seems to be taking a minute, so I'm actually going to go ahead and just cut right to there. Alright, after waiting for about 2 minutes, we did finally land into a game, and I'm going to turn off my boosters here. So, important thing to do when landing into a game. So, obviously, we are on, I forget the name of the map, doesn't really matter. Either way, it's a sand map. Generally speaking, you do want to go to the dunes on this side, or at least I do. This is not a side-scraping tank, so you definitely don't want to go into the town there. And as I move into position, let's just take a look at what we have going against us. So we have a Churchill on our team, that's good. A Mitsu, me as a Renwald, a Stritzvagen type, kind of a mediocre team to be honest. And is that a target? No, it is not. On the enemy team, however, we have an M4 Sherman, a Mitsu. Honestly, their team is probably a little bit stronger than ours, so we're going to have to be careful with that. Looking, the A20... he's sitting over there, holding a kind of a position, waiting for something to happen. There's the Panzer. I do need to be careful poking up here just because I don't want to get hit by potential tank destroyer, because I do know there is one over there. And let's see, is he spotted? No, he is not spotted. Now he is spotted, and sure enough, he was over there. I'm going to collapse that. We don't need to have the names of the tanks showing up all the time. Come on, aim quickly, quickly. Yeah, that aim time really is not good. Didn't really expect that to hit, but I was kind of hoping that it would. So we've already lost our Hetzer. That's a little bit unfortunate. This game is already not looking terribly fantastic. So I'm going to try to get some crossfire. I don't think it's really wise to push onto the A20 just yet. Now I've got myself into a bit of a pickle, considering I now have a tier 4 behind me and a tier 5 in front of me. So I'm going to try to move ahead and not die. So the A20, he decided to pull back. I'm trying to decide what I want to do here. Obviously, pushing towards the A20 is not going to be a terribly fantastic idea, but then again, we also have like 3 tier 5s over here. Get a shot into the Panzer. And obviously, this team is falling apart pretty quickly. There we go. We need to get a shot into him. So I'm still alive. That's key. Got 666 damage. That's about what I had hoped. Honestly, not much I can really do in this position. Granted, I've got the AT pushing on me, and I've got 2 tier 5s. I'm going to risk it with the tier 5s. I need to not bounce like that. So there we go. There's an example of the armor doing something. I just need to keep myself in between tanks. Honestly, I wish I had got that shot earlier. I am actually bouncing a fair amount. I just hope I don't get ammo racked here. So unfortunately, we do die. That was a very quick game. We managed to do what we could, and I'm still going to leave this in the video despite the kind of calamity that happened here. Because let's be honest, you're going to get games like that. That's just what happens in Blitz. Teams, stuff like that. But you can see we were able to do some damage. Basically, the whole time I just tried to stay in a position where I wasn't constantly being shot at by tanks. And look, we can see we did get 835 damage out of in the end there. So not too bad, all things considered. We did get top of the team. And even compared to the enemy team, I did the third highest damage overall, and that was pretty devastating on our end. You can see the T1 Heavy there got quite a bit of damage. But coming back now, let's go ahead and launch into another game to see if maybe we can get a win out of this one. No joke, literally after 5.5 minutes of waiting, we are now in a match. I have no idea why that took so long. There were literally, and I am not joking here, there were 30 people in Tier 5, about 30 people in Tier 6, and another 15 or so in Tier 4, which meant there was plenty of people to match against, but it still took 5.5 minutes. I'm also noticing that I'm not getting matched against Tier 6s, so I'm beginning to wonder if maybe this tank itself has a very tight matchmaker, but I can't really prove it yet until we land in a match with a Tier 6, so I'm just going to push up, and hopefully this game will go better than the last one. So this is Yamato Harbor. Generally speaking, I don't go to the harbor. It's usually a death trap over there. And by and large, in pretty much every tier, at least the ones I play, from anywhere from like Tier 5 to 8, everyone pretty much goes to this side exclusively. I know in Tier 10, people will try to play a little bit more diversely, but in these tiers, what is that leopard doing? Either way, I'm going to see if I can use some of my gun depression here to get over this ridge. And you can see, like, I can look down comfortably here. I don't really need to poke out much at all aside to get shots. Now, it's very clear that nobody's looking at me at the moment. I've got my eyes set on the M7. Now, there is another Renault over there. Okay, there's a Renault. Hopefully you could see the armor a little bit. Its side armor was not terribly fantastic, as you could see. At least as you could hopefully see. He was in the bushes. So he's pushing up over here. And we've got these 4 players, my bad. 4 players over there. Nice. We get a shot in the M7. He's pretty weak at this point. I'm thinking that Stritzwagen's going to push. He does kind of. If he stays out in the open like that, he's going to get hit like that. Already we've got about just shy of 500 damage. And already this game is looking a little bit better for us. So we've got the BDR. Let's see. Okay, that's a case where HE will do something. Whopping 5 damage. I did bounce a few of those leopard shots. There is that Panzer over there. Ooh. I thought I was reloaded. I fired, or tried to fire anyway, and apparently my shot was not reloaded. And then I kept clicking and then shot when I wasn't aiming. So there's the M7 up there. We've got the leopard. Okay, M7's backing down. I'm hoping somebody moves. This is going to get kind of boring if nobody really does anything. So there goes the M7. He's poking up a little bit there. There's the Stritzwagen. M7's dead. Stritzwagen's weak, and now I'm going to try to push a little bit here without getting hit by the BDR, because that's a pretty nasty tank to get put up against. Now, it is currently a 7 versus 3, so we definitely have this game. Oh, and that BDR is stock. I might even be able to pester him a little bit. Not even sure what happened to that shot. Honestly, I'm going to try to get a shot into the BDR right about there. I did take about 157, but that's okay. I'm going to go for this leopard now because he looks like he can actually be HE'd if we get an HE, and we don't. Maybe we could get an HE this video, though. I mean, if I can get an HE with this tank, that would be perfect. I keep narrowly missing. I'm, like, not even focused on the stats. I just want an HE. Come on. Come on. Penetrating HE. That is so troll right there. Oh, I swear, I've actually hit him there. So that might even be spaced armor. Either way, as you can see, you cannot HE the side of a leopard. We'd found that out. That was very bizarre. I would have totally thought we could do that. And apparently, we won that game with an AFK on our team because they suicided. And that generally only happens if someone doesn't move the entire game. And it wouldn't surprise me if we find somebody that did 0 damage. So even with my blunders with the HE and goofing off like that, we still managed to pull out 1,108 damage, which is pretty good. Granted, it was a class 3. It wasn't the highest amount of damage, but either way, I would consider that game a pretty good one, all things considered. And sure enough, we did have an AFK. Oddly enough, we did not do the most damage on the team. That went to the M41, the Semavante. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that. So I'm going to go ahead and play one more game just to kind of give an all-round opinion on this tank. So for our last game, we are on Fort Despair. Now, I will be upfront and honest, there were actually 2 games before this that I ended up cutting out. Not because they were bad, but they were kind of uneventful, and in both cases, I actually messed up my recording. But basically, the gist there is that one of them was like 1.2 thousand damage, the other one was 1,000 damage, and we won. And in both cases, they were just kind of boring, and again, I messed up. But anyway, with that said, we are on Fort Despair. Looking at the matchup here, we have an AT2, a Leopard, a Renwalt, a Sturzfog, and a B1, a Panzer 4D, an SU-85B. That's pretty okay. On the enemy, we've got a high score, 2 Renwalts, a Wolverine, an A20, an M7, and a Grizzly. Honestly, I'm going to say that's probably going to be a better matchup, and I'm already not paying attention. This tank really does get some nice bounces. Now, unfortunately, that guy that I was aiming at didn't get as lucky as I did and didn't get the bounce. It looks like he's going to push up, so me and this AT2, it looks like, are going to be focusing on him. Don't ask me what happened to that shot because I couldn't tell you even if I wanted to. Honestly, there is another bounce, and honestly, I actually do hit him in the hatch there. It's very interesting with this tank, and I'm going to explain this further in the next few minutes, and you can watch the game because this is probably going to just be another steamroll, to be honest. But basically, when I've been playing this tank, it takes an extremely long time to get into a game. And when I say extremely, I think I waited up to like 5 minutes for one of the games, and none of them have I gotten in any quicker than 1.5 minutes, which even on NA is pretty slow. But not only that, but I only ever see a tier 4 and a tier 5 matchup. I have yet to see a tier 6, and I have played in, I want to say like, what is it, like 6 games at this point? It's actually been quite a few, and to not see a tier 6 at some point in all of that, I don't know how that bounced, but to not see a tier 6 at all is a little bit suspicious to me, and I'm almost wondering if maybe part of the reason that the waiting time is so long is that this tank might actually have rigged matchmaking in that you can't get against a tier 6. I don't know for sure. Feel free to do some testing if you have this tank and let me know, but as of yet, 6 games in, I am still not seeing a tier 6 whatsoever, which is kind of crazy because tier 5, like generally speaking, that's pretty much all you see. In fact, it's actually very hard to get into a tier 4 match in a tier 5, and I'm sorry, bro, you're going to end up getting farmed. Probably his internet died, and yeah, well, as you can see, that's not going to go very well for him. Now, this is not a terribly good position here. We've got, I guess it's an okay position. It's a 3 versus 2, but they've got some pretty good positions. I know the Wolverine is back here somewhere. There's the Renwalt. There's the second Renwalt. I forgot there was 2 of them. There's the Wolverine. I'm going to do a flanking maneuver and hopefully kind of surprise one of these. I'm going to use the rock that the Wolverine is behind to keep him from shooting me, and I'm going to shoot this Renwalt very nicely there. So our B1 is dead. That Renwalt is kind of seen better days. He's going to get roasted pretty quickly. I don't want to get hit by the Wolverine. He is now looking at me. I'm going to try to poke out, shoot the Renwalt, and then hopefully back up with a bounce. That was very nice. That was possibly a game changer. Okay, that AT2's got... This is probably not even going to get damaged all game. That's pretty good. Now, I am lagging a little bit. That is always annoying. There we go. Nice HE. I've wanted to show an HE all game. That is one of the few tanks you can actually HE, apparently. So if we get a shot here, I'm hoping this AT2 doesn't steal my kill. That would be kind of annoying. This one's mine. This one's mine. Please, please let it be mine. Ah, that really burns me up. But either way, we did pretty good. 4 kills, and we did really rotate around the map pretty decently. You notice we started on one side, and we kind of did a huge wraparound, which is, of course, very good. And wow, what a game to end on. 2,000 damage. And look at that. It wasn't even a class 1. And with how many kills I got, all in all, I would say this tank is actually fairly decent. It's not, like, the best, but it is pretty good. And if it really does have rigged matchmaking in that it can't go against a tier 6, like I'm beginning to suspect, that is huge because it takes forever to land in a game, and I have yet to see a tier 6. So in summary, let's go ahead and take a look at what we accomplished here. If we come back to notifications, we can see that when I started playing the Renwalt for this video, okay, we played 5 games. The first one was a loss. Then we had a victory, which was, what was that, like 1,100 damage. A victory that I did end up cutting out just due to messing up a little bit. 1,264. And then we had the, oh, that's the same match. another one that I cut out, which was 1041. And then the game we just played, which was 2000 damage and was a class 2. We got a high caliber. And honestly, I believe with most of these games, we did manage to get top of the team for 2 of those. I think this one might have been the one exception. Nope. Top damage there. Okay, we were second damage there, and overall on this loss here where we got even just 835 damage, we did manage to get top of the team. So all in all, the worst position I've been in is in second, which makes me think that this tank is pretty decent because I generally don't get that high of a damage every time. But either way, all in all, I would say this tank is actually fairly decent. But anyway, with that, I do hope you all enjoyed, and as always, have fun, good luck, and happy tanking.